Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Shroud of Turin, carbon dating, blood evidence, and the mystery that won't die. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. The Shroud of Turin is a 4-meter linen cloth bearing the faint image of a crucified man. It has been examined by scientists from NASA, the US Air Force Academy, and dozens of universities. The 1988 carbon dating exercise, conducted independently by 3 of the world's most respected laboratories, declared it a medieval forgery dating to 1260–1390 AD. Case closed. Most people assumed it was not closed. The lead chemist on the Oxford dating team subsequently concluded the sample was taken from a medieval repair patch, not the original cloth. STURP, the Shroud of Turin research project, sent 33 scientists with 120 hours of access and the most advanced instrumentation available. Their 1981 conclusion: no paint, no pigment, no dye, no known artistic technique could explain the image. 45 years later, no one has identified a forgery method that produces an equivalent result. What exactly is on that cloth? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Ancient technical knowledge is remarkably vulnerable. It lives in the hands of craftsmen, in the minds of engineers, in the institutional memory of workshops and guilds. When a civilization collapses through invasion, plague, climate change, or internal conflict, that knowledge can vanish within a single generation. There is no guarantee that what is written down will be preserved, and much ancient knowledge was never written down at all. It was transmitted orally, apprentice to master, in a chain that a single catastrophe could permanently sever. This vulnerability helps explain what might otherwise seem impossible: that the ancient world possessed capabilities we did not recover for centuries or millennia. The Romans knew how to make self-healing concrete by mixing volcanic ash with seawater. When the empire fell, the recipe was forgotten. Medieval European builders worked with inferior materials for over 1,000 years before the technique was rediscovered through analysis of surviving Roman structures. The knowledge did not disappear because it was suppressed or hidden. It simply died with the people who held it. Apply this principle more broadly, and the anomalies of the ancient world become less mysterious, not in the sense of being explained, but in the sense of being plausible. If Rome could lose a concrete formula for a millennium, what else might have been lost? What might advanced cultures in earlier epochs have discovered and then lost, leaving only fragmentary traces? A strange artifact here, a suggestive diagram there, that later generations would struggle to interpret. This is the question at the heart of every anomalous discovery from the ancient world. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Shroud of Turin, carbon dating, blood evidence, and the mystery that won't die is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Shroud of Turin measures 4 meters by 1 meters and bears the faint sepia-toned image of a man showing wounds consistent with crucifixion, nail wounds in the wrists, puncture marks consistent with a crown of thorns, lance wound in the side, and scourge marks across the back. The image appears on both front and back of the cloth, showing the full length of the body. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the cloth's first documented historical appearance in Europe was at Liéry in France in 1353, when it was displayed by the knight Geoffrey de Charny. The Bishop of Troyes reported to the Pope that the artist who painted it had confessed, though no such confession document has ever been produced. The shroud passed to the House of Savoy in 1453 and was damaged in a fire in 1532. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine the Shroud of Turin research project, funded by the Holy Shroud Guild and conducted in 1978, brought 33 scientists to Turin for 120 hours of continuous examination. Researchers included physicists, chemists, biologists, and photographic experts. Their 1981 summary report concluded the image was not produced by any known artistic technique and that the body image chemistry differed fundamentally from the blood chemistry. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, blood type AB positive has been identified in the stains on the shroud by multiple researchers, including Alan Adler, a specialist in porphyrin chemistry. Adler and John Heller's 1980 analysis identified the blood stains as consistent with real human blood under physiological stress, bilirubin levels elevated in a pattern consistent with severe trauma, though critics note that distinguishing genuine ancient blood from other sources is methodologically complex. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the 1988 carbon dating was conducted by 3 independent laboratories, Oxford, Zurich, and the University of Arizona, who tested samples from the same corner of the cloth and returned dates of 1260–1390 AD. The exercise was considered definitive. However, Raymond Rogers, the STURP chemist responsible for the chemical sampling protocol, published a peer-reviewed paper in Thermochimica Acta in 2005, arguing the sample was taken from a medieval repair. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The shroud image contains spatial information detectable in 3 dimensions, a property identified when the image was processed through a VP8 image analyzer by STURP researchers John Jackson and Eric Jumper in 1976. Unlike conventional photographs or paintings, which produce distorted results when processed for three-dimensional relief, the Shroud image yielded a consistent three-dimensional body shape, suggesting the image encodes distance information rather than simple surface tone. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Shroud of Turin, carbon dating, blood evidence, and the mystery that won't die. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that medieval forgery by an unidentified artistic technique. The 1988 carbon dating result supports this, and Bishop Pierre d'Arcis's 1389 letter to the Pope references an artist's confession. The significant objection is that no identified medieval or modern technique has successfully replicated the Shroud image's chemical and structural properties, particularly the three-dimensional information content and the superficial nature of the image coloring, which penetrates only the outermost fibers of the linen. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the carbon dating sample was contaminated. Rogers's 2005 Thermochimica Acta paper argued chemically that the 1988 sample corner contained cotton fibers consistent with a medieval repair rather than the original first C. Entari cloth. Leoncio Garzavaldez had previously proposed bacterial contamination. If the sample was non-representative, the 1988 result cannot be applied to the full cloth, and the question of age is scientifically open. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the image was formed by a burst of radiation at the moment of resurrection, a hypothesis advanced by some researchers, including Giulio Fanti, who proposed that a brief, intense discharge of vacuum ultraviolet radiation from the body surf ACE could superficially color linen fibers without paint or dye. This is not a religious claim per se, but a physical mechanism hypothesis, though it has not been experimentally reproduced. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Shroud of Turin, carbon dating, blood evidence, and the mystery that won't die does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes STURP 1981 analysis confirmed no paint, dye, pigment, or applied substance of any kind explains the body image. The coloring is confined to the outermost surface of individual linen fibers, a depth of approximately 200 nanometers, which is shallower than any known painting or dyeing technique can achieve. This surface-only property remains the central challenge for any forgery hypothesis. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented pollen samples from the Shroud, analyzed by botanist Avinoam Danin of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, identified species including Zygophyllum dumasum, which grows only in Israel, Jordan, and Sinai, and Gundelia tournifortii, associated in some traditions with the crown of thorns. If the pollen identification is correct, the cloth was at some point in the Levant, consistent with a Middle Eastern origin but not provable as 1st century. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Giulio Fanti's 2013 mechanical testing of individual shroud fibers, published in the journal Vibrational Spectroscopy, applied tensile strength and Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy to fibers and returned a date range of 300 BC to 400 AD. His 2022 infrared spectroscopy study returned a similar result. These dates conflict with the 1988 carbon dating but have not yet been independently replicated by other laboratories. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Shroud of Turin, carbon dating, blood evidence, and the mystery that won't die. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. No scientific consensus exists on either the age or the image formation mechanism of the Shroud of Turin. Pope Francis has venerated it as an icon without declaring it an authentic relic, maintaining the Catholic Church's long-held position of neither confirming nor denying authenticity. Rogers's 2005 challenge to the 1988 carbon dating remains published and uncountered in the peer-reviewed literature. Fanti's alternative dating studies are published but not independently replicated. The image formation mechanism proposed by no researcher has been experimentally reproduced. The shroud remains the most scientifically examined artifact in history and the least conclusively understood. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made, new analyses are being published, new voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Shroud of Turin, carbon dating, blood evidence, and the mystery that won't die from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Shroud of Turin ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.